you yourself should be able to feel like you can freely play and go back to being, you know, cops and robbers, childhood stuff, making things up, D&D, fantasy role playing kind of thing. You know, if you're ever a dungeon master in D&D, you know how to sort of create. I think it's important to understand, how an audience is going to react to something, because you want, filmmakers are, it's a dialogue you have with the audience, and I also think if you study, if you're a filmmaker, you should be studying people. And part of studying people is, it's for making great characters or finding authentic performances and stuff like that. But it's also studying people for how they react to the things that you're doing, because you want to make sure it's really easy. I mean, anybody who's ever made a war movie understands how quickly an anti-war movie can also be a pro-war movie if you don't understand, if you think you're making an anti-war movie. And, even when we're making a Lego movie, there's so many people that when you'd see reviews that were, this movie's a pro-business, pro-capitalism movie, which is very, it's obviously sponsored by Lego and everything. But there was clearly also another message going on in the movie that if you look for it, and there was many people who picked up on that message too. And so it's interesting. You got to study how people respond to movies to help make sure that the point that you're trying to make gets across as much as possible. One of my favorite DVD commentaries is Darren Aronofsky on Pi, on his movie Pi, where he's talking about stuff that, as a filmmaker, that he didn't understand what the actors were giving him until he got into post. And he said that was a big eye-opening experience for him, because he didn't see it on set. He kind of thought actually one of the actors was bad. And then when he got into post, he was able to see, oh no, they're giving me something really amazing here. I just didn't see it because I came in with a preconceived notion. And so being a part of editorials, you kind of help find things, find the tone, if you approach editing like it's another extension of storytelling, another extension of screenwriting, you really can help make something really beautiful that maybe the filmmakers didn't see before. But some of it is also, you get them excited about that stuff, but you also have to say, hey, here's from my point of view, here's things that I feel like this movie doesn't have any comedy. This movie, I said, you don't have any comedy in movies like this, or you're going to make this an all audience movie. There has to be moments of levity. There has to be moments of things this movie will collapse under its own weight if it takes itself serious, hyper seriously all the time. So you gotta have some, Aliens is a perfect example. Like Aliens is great because there's some serious stuff. Bill Paxton comes in and it's super funny. Like there's just stuff like you have to have a balance. There was a spec script that Zach had written, or at least had this idea that he pitched to the studio, and then they paid him to write it. But yeah, Zach wrote, and he was on a trip to Iceland. And he started thinking about climate change, and he started thinking about things that have been buried under the ice. And there's been some stories about stuff that have been uncovered. There was some sort of wolf type animal that they had uncovered under the ice that had been buried for I think 200 years, something like that, and had live anthrax and things like that. So like there was stories like that sort of like, had informed kind of where he was coming from. And so he kind of worked backwards, I think. The white spikes didn't have tentacles that shot things. The white spikes they were white and they had spikes on them, and that's why they were called white spikes. And that's pretty much all the description in the script. And so we had to kind of develop it out of, but I knew that they needed to have like offensive weapons and that sort of thing in order for them to, if you're gonna say that these things took over the world, they have to do something more than like, claw at you and eat. They have to have some kind of weaponry of some sort. Texture is super important to me. Like just it gets down to texture and lighting. And the thing I would say to the effects team over and over again is like more texture, more relief, more history to their arms and legs and things like that. Like I want to know that they've been through something. So I want to see nicks, cuts, scratches, eczema. Like just give me, just give me more stuff on their skin, pock marks, things like that. Just and I wanted them to feel the things I said to the guys. I wanted them to feel ancient. I wanted them to feel like they were, never gonna not be hungry, that they had an insatiable appetite, forever hungry. I wanted their teeth to look like a dental nightmare, and I wanted them to have a feral intelligence. I said I wanted them to be like coyotes and wolves, and that they could communicate with each other, that you understood that they were running plays if they were attacking their prey and things like that. And so those were the things that we were talking about, and with the design team. And yeah, this thing was all designed by, a little bit of the stunt team, a little bit of Jamie and in VFX, a little bit of the editorial team kind of putting some of this stuff together. So yeah, it was it was everybody kind of coming together to come up with the choreography and the kind of the dance and the story that we needed to tell. And I love this bit where the female goes up the wall and is sort of like using this guy as a human shield. These guys are real Navy SEALs. Those guys they're awesome.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And then the female's calling. Yeah. So, and then shooting the stuff with Pratt, that's actually a reversed shot. That's actually, the shot was actually a pullout, but then I reversed it to go into Pratt.
That's an editor. That's an editor.
Yeah. Yeah. I gotta, sometimes you find these things like, oh yeah, we need this. This will be cool. And then, the sound team did a great job with all of this stuff in a very short amount of time. This hit here is a great hit. That's a real hit with Kim, who's Yvonne's stunt performer, taking a real hard, solid hit. There's a stitch right there. There's 2 different takes. Actors are playful people. I hesitate to say treat them like children, because that could get taken out of context, and that's not the message that I want to send. But you yourself should be able to feel like you can freely play and go back to being, cops and robbers, childhood stuff, making things up, D&D, fantasy role playing kind of thing. If you're ever a dungeon master in D&D, you know how to sort of create. You've got the wind machine, you've got smoke machines, you've got all sorts of other stuff that you can use to create the feeling. You can play music. I mean, there's a bit when Nikki was in the plane where I was just like, all right, I'm just gonna play like, Fortunate Son by Creedence Clearwater Revival, and the camera's just gonna fly around them, and it just helped everybody get into the feeling that they're in a real helicopter flying around. They're not in a green screen set. They're not, they're in the shit, man. Flying around in a helicopter. So it's fun to do that kind of thing. And that's something that John Hughes would do all the time. He always was playing music on set. So if he wanted to make something feel a certain way, sometimes he'd play during the scene if there wasn't dialogue. Sometimes he'd play it just before the scene to sort of set the tone. He'd play, a psychedelic furs song to sort of set the tone of what the scene is going to be. And then roll cameras and kind of get everyone in the mood.